Hello and welcome to Confused Rifts, also known as Challenge Rifts. Now this is the Cancer Rift. Now, I'm not going to show you how to run this. I don't want you to run this, because I don't want you to lose any passion you may have for this game, especially seeing that we had the BlizzCon announcement saying there's nothing going to be talked about, we're just going to have a normal panel that's just going to like last year. I don't want you to be any more disappointed in the game than you are currently right now. I don't want you to feel burnt out for when the season comes out, so I'm not going to show you how to run this. What I am going to tell you is if you need the materials, just run some Torment 8 bounties. Just one set will give you the same amount of materials as this will give you, and it'll give you some legendaries too. So you get actually more bonus from running the Torment 8, just bounty run than doing this week, okay? So, it gives you the same amount of materials, gets you legendaries, Death's Breath, more Death's Breath, all that, all the works, all the fixings, and honestly, just please, don't do this. Don't run this one. It has 369k HP, has almost no defenses. It's annoying to play. You're waiting for this to hit lightning so you can hit one ability. You are missing a lot of the items required to make this build work. It's a strafe Fan and Knives build, but it's missing the items to make the strafe actually work. It has the wrong weapon on. I don't want you to suffer any more than you need to, okay? But if you insist, I will show you how to play this build, okay? So, you have to understand that Aquila Curious is basically your only amount of defense other than Vengeance. Vengeance should always be on, that's a given, okay? So you're going to be strafing. Notice how I already have lost my Aquila Curious buff for a moment there. In that moment, I could have died to a single hit. So what you have to do is shift left click while strafing. Okay? Otherwise that Aquila Curious falls off, and I accidentally didn't hit my key for Vengeance, and Vengeance fell off. And you can see how much of a pain in the ass this build is. This is a lot like Natalia's, by the way. This is how Natalia's plays, except it's a way less glass cannon, because when you play it, I'm sure all of you are intelligent enough to understand that you don't roll vitality off of your gear, and that you do use a Fortress Ballista. I trust all of you to be that smart to know, okay, I know what to do, or know that, okay, there's a guide on the internet written by someone who is actually quite smart and has run all the math behind it, and they're saying run this item and this item and that item. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Perfect sense. Cool. And then you do that and it works fine. This build does all of those things wrong, ignores any semblance of a guide, just heard about the thing and just tried to do it. Okay? So you're gonna smoke screen through enemies that are going to kill you, and Fan and Knives whenever this hits cold, and Companion whenever it feels fun. Okay? I'm intentionally trying to make this sound as boring and bad as possible because it's seriously 15 seconds between actually dealing damage. So let's... If you want to leave and get the materials, go do the bounty now. If the Torment 8 bounties now. If you're actually here to see me rip this build apart, I'm about to do that. But again, I'm not going to show you the run. I don't want you to be burnt out on this game. Let me be burnt out in the game and not you. Right? I consider that better. So, we have a Dawn, we have a Kamar 10 clip, and they're both not ancient, and this is LON. Alright? This is very, 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 very bad. We have 4 items in total that are not ancient, but 2 weapons. Both of them not being ancient means that we have way less damage, and we're missing 2 items from the possible 13 being ancient, and that's a problem. So we all know that you can be like farming like T6, right? So you're like, oh yeah, I'm going away at T6, and then you get a legendary weapon that's ancient, and you can go up to T10 sometimes, depending on which weapon it is and your current gear state. So this says a lot about this build, okay? If this Kamar 10 clip was ancient, I could understand why it's being run. You always, in the strafe build, you always run a Fortress Ballista. Now, the reason why you do that is because Fortress Ballista gives you 3%. I mean, it's like 2 to 3%, but it's depending on the range roll you get. So, but it's like 2 to 3% of your HP per hit. Per hit. So you have just like a shitload of vitality and just defenses, and then, I mean, we'll come over here. Watch how fast this hits. Alright, these are normal difficulty enemies, by the way, so that should tell you something. But look at how fast that's hitting, right? Really fast. Really, really fast. So that makes Fortress Ballista insane. You're stacking that thing to the max, and nothing can really kill you. And that's what makes Fortress Ballista good, and that's what helps make this build good. But that's missing on this build, and so this build is, like, by necessity, kind of bad. If it at least had the damage to make up for it, I'd understand, but it doesn't. Okay? All your damage comes from Fan of Knives. I'd say, like, 90% of the, you know, a real build's damage would come from Fan of Knives. Not good. So this doubling the effect of Strafe, and Strafe does no damage, that doesn't mean anything. 2 times 0 is still 0, so not good. So both these weapons non-ancient, that's bad. These illusory boots, these are the shining star of this build. These make sense as an item with their secondary effect. They have the correct rolls. It works. I mean, it has health, global pickup radius, it has the movement speed, it has all res, it has dex, it has vitality. That is way more that can be said than any of these other items in this build. Kamar 10 clip, its secondary effect doesn't matter, its strafe damage doesn't matter, okay? Its bonuses don't mean anything. You're going to notice quickly that this is going to be a theme in this. We have Depth Diggers. Depth Diggers don't do anything for this build. I don't even know how those got there. Only if you're using, I think, what, Unhallowed Essence grenade build, would you use Depth Diggers in Cube, I think? You might actually put them on. I don't know. I don't remember right now. I don't like the build, so I don't really keep it around. None of these rings are re-rolled, even though they really should be. We're also, of course, missing our Taeguk, which is literally critical to this build. I am not fucking with you. You actually need Taeguk. And the reason why I think this build, like these builds, these strafe builds, underperform is because Taeguk was reduced in its duration to half of what it was. You know, the 1.5 seconds instead of 3. Honestly, I think if it was still 3 seconds, it would allow for a lot more breathing room on the channeling builds, and I think they'd make a big comeback, and that would be very nice, because, I mean, 1.5 seconds is not a lot of time. So, yeah, that's why normally this build runs strafe, but without Taeguk. It means you don't run strafe. It doesn't mean anything. It's pointless. You know, now your strafe damage is dealing even less than it could be. And it's not giving you the defensive benefit. Pain of the Powerful is also the incorrect choice. You want something else. Usually Stricken goes here. But I guess Powerful works. Fuck it, why not? The speed at which you hit, you know, even though it has an internal cooldown, you end up building up the actual bonus on this. And you don't need the bonus damage to anything other than the Rift Guardian. Rift Guardian is actually always your biggest problem. So if this was a Gogaka Swiftness, that would make sense. If this was a Taeguk, this would make sense. If this was a Bane of the Stricken, it would make sense. But it's a Bane of the Powerful. I don't know why it's here. Okay, I don't. There's other gems that are better, and they're not here. Speaking of other gems, we of course don't have a socket in this neck. I'll get to that in a moment, but first I want to go over these. So I want to start here because you're going to notice a pattern again. The secondary effect on this makes sense, but only if you have Taeguk, right? You need the gem. So the way you're moving around a lot and dealing damage, and so this amplifies that effect. Otherwise, this doesn't do anything. Notice, the vitality is rolled off of this in favor of sockets. Okay, not the life per second, which is not helpful for this build, but the fucking vitality. So he made himself squishier and just gave himself some, like, a tiny bit more damage. Tiny, 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 tiny bit. Alright, that's not okay. This Razor's Drop, presumably the same deal. I mean, unless this rolled like, you know, one of the percent skill damage, in which case, why is it all res? It still needs to be percent life. I don't know. Again, also the secondary effect on this doesn't help you at all. But, you know, at least this is an ancient item. You know, like Kamar 10 clip, you know, it's not an ancient item. So that's not helping you. This is at least ancient, so it has the right direction. Gloves of Worship. What is this? These are replaceable by yellows. You can craft yellow gauntlets, they'll be better. It's not hard to craft Reaper, you know, I was gonna say Reaper Wraps. I'll get to the Reaper Wraps in a moment, but it's not hard to craft. You know, take some craftable gloves and get them ancient and put those on instead, because it's just simple. You just need some crafting materials, and it's clear this guy has run some Act bounties, because I mean, he has the Act 2, and I believe these are also Act 2. And these are also Act 2. So he's run some bounties, so surely this guy has the materials to roll a couple of gloves, or, you know, and a couple of items to be ancient, but he didn't. And so these bad Gloves of Worship are Dex, All-Res, and then crit damage, cooldown reduction. Okay, so one item with cooldown reduction, okay, that's fine. That's usually fine in a Demon Hunter build when you have a Gogok of Swiftness on, but he's missing the Gogok, so he has to resort to rolling, I think, 3 items to cooldown reduction, and then using a Leoric's Crown to amplify the cooldown reduction in his helm. Of course, again, Vitality was rerolled off instead of like the All-Res, so he has no effective hit points even more. The Shrine effects don't do anything for you because this is a Greater Rift, so good job. Mantle of Channeling. Okay, so again, we do not have Taeguk. Mantle of Channeling's secondary effect does not help us. We take a little bit less damage when we're strafing, but we have to intersperse our strafes with shots from our evasive fire so often that it doesn't matter. So we end up not having this 25% damage mitigation almost all the time. The Leoric's Crown. This was either critical hit chance or it was I believe it rolls like main stat, and then other stat socket. So I believe this was Vitality, rerolled to All-Res. Figure that one out. Then, of course, the Aquila Curious, which, thank God, wasn't touched. I'm sure if he thought about it, he would have rolled the Vitality off into All-Res and left the percent life. Thankfully, this wasn't fucked with. We have his Overwhelming Desire. His overwhelming desire to make a bad build and just get more cooldown reduction. So we notice that it's Dex, crit damage, crit chance, cooldown reduction, physical resist, and then just, you know, a chance to charm an enemy, which of course this build does not leverage whatsoever, because it can't, because we're not like a, you know, we're not actually the correct class to leverage this item. You know, it's just a chance to make them not hit you. But of course this is also a build that in its current state you just run around like a bitch, you know, chicken and head cut off, you know, with a smoke screen, like oh god, wait for the, give me my, you know, convention of elements, I need my convention, give me my convention, oh we're almost there, get in position, Venom Knives, and then you do the same thing when you just run around like a chicken with its head cut off for a little bit longer, and yeah, it's, you don't really leverage Overwhelming Desire whatsoever, and it could have been a socket, which would have been way more damage, more defense, more cooldown reduction, any of those things, all of those things. It's none of those things, so it's just a shitty critical hit chance roll instead. Yeah, it's ancient, but you could have crafted a Hellfire Amulet and gotten a passive as well. You know, the awareness passive eludes this guy. Why we have Perfectionist instead of awareness, I don't fucking know. But, you know, Hellfires are easy to craft. I mean, I think they're actually honestly one of the easiest things to get as an ancient item once you have the materials. And the material requirement is pretty low, so why isn't it ancient? Why isn't it a Hellfire? Why is it an overwhelming desire? He's run a bunch of acts, so, bounties, so why? Promise of Glory. These come from a monk. And this kind of ties the whole thing together on why this is such a shit Demon Hunter. He's a monk, main. He doesn't play Demon Hunter. He doesn't touch Demon Hunter. He just kind of cobbled this together, and this is kind of the evidence for that. It has holy damage on it. Holy damage only comes from monks. And you don't have a blind for the Promise of Glory either, so as a Demon Hunter, so there's no use. I mean, if he had like some direction and didn't know any better and didn't know like Glory Orbs suck, which again, can't leverage the passive effect of this item. If he didn't know that, like, yeah, Nephilim Glory Orbs suck dick, okay, and he had a blind faith on, I'd be like, alright, well, he has direction, but it's just the wrong direction. We just need to guide him in the right direction. He'll be okay. But no, that's not what he has on. He just has whatever he could get ancient. Of course, ignoring the fact that he could have crafted Reaper Wraps, which are incredibly easy to obtain. They're part of your season journey that you have to effectively get them because you have to kill Malthael. Malthael drops the pattern. The pattern's easy to craft considering how many of the, by necessity, how many of the bounties he's run. So he has the materials. So what's he doing with them? I don't know. But Reaper Wraps could have been a much better stand-in. They would have had a secondary effect that he could have used. And on top of that, not very well, but at least used. And on top of that, they would have been correct for his class. So why is this here? I don't know. They suck. This Wailing Host, why is the armor not rolled off? Why is this still Dex crit? Why is this not, damage range or even cooldown reduction? I don't know. I don't care. Why isn't this why is this not any stat that is going to benefit him instead of just dexterity? Like, fuck, roll it to vitality, actually, if I'm to be honest, because it has so low vitality on this build. It's just the shit here, and like the Depth Diggers, I still can't wrap my head around this. How did this happen? If he had an Unholodescence Grenade build, he'd be running Unholodescence Grenades, right? And that's the only time you're going to be running Depth Diggers in Cube, if I remember correctly. So how did this happen? Like, you can't tell me like he's just a gen monk and this is the only armor slot he's cubed. If that was true, I'd be blown away. And I mean, at the same time, he's only Paragon 380, so you look at that and you go, is this his only character? Like, I don't know. Was this thrown to him from, a monk friend that he was running with? I don't know. But, like, none of this makes sense. So we have Smokescreen special recipe. I've never been a fan of the special recipe rune. Lingering Fog, which doubles the duration of Smokescreen, is pretty fucking good. Instead of 1 second, it's 1.5 seconds of invincibility. I think that's pretty good. Displacement's also considered extremely good, particularly for speedrunning. And so when you're using a Nats plus Sages speed farm set, you can use Smokescreen with Displacement, and that'll make you move extremely fast with tactical advantage. And now you're moving at 160% extra speed. You go from like zoom across the screen. It's fucking hilarious, right? It's tons of fun. But he's not doing that. He's running special recipe, which means he can hit it more often. Instead of 14 discipline, it's 8. So yeah, that's a good shave off, but like, really there's better options, right? Like, why? And again, why is there no passive? Like, this build dies like nobody's business, so why not run the passive that makes it so that when you die, you're not fully dead? I don't know. I'm pretty sure the guy who made this doesn't know either. There are a million ways to improve this build, and, like, none of them have been chosen. This is just amazing. This is 20 minutes to get here, right? And I can just tell you at the end of this, I know I've taken up a lot of your time, but please don't run this week. Just don't. Avoid it. Leave it alone. Pretend it doesn't exist. Don't get burnt out. Okay? It's been Skaith. Sorry for taking up so much of your time, but if you did enjoy it, leave a like, a dislike, anything. I'm out. I'll see you next week when hopefully we don't have a bad build.